Tonight we have 6 incredible local storytellers to tell their tales of travels. First up we have Tom Prendergast. He reached out to me and asked to be a storyteller, which I thought was really thrilling, that he kind of had the idea that this was something he wanted to be a part of. He's a Chicagoan, so please be kind to our locals here. He's currently riding, and I had to clarify this because I don't know these model names, so this is pretty interesting to me. His current bike is a 99 BMW R1100R and an 81 Yamaha SR250. And this guy has been through 49 states and 10 Canadian provinces, so this guy has traveled. He is a Charter Life member of the American Motorcycle Association, which is a pretty cool association to be a part of, I gotta say, and a member of the Iron Butt Association as well. So this guy can cover miles in a day. Today, Tom, what state didn't you make it to? Hawaii.
I'm written in Hawaii.
Jill, where's Jill?
I'm written in Hawaii.
Jill is written in Hawaii. She can give you some tips. Everybody talk. Without further ado, I'd really like to welcome Tom Prendergast to the stage to tell his story.
Hello. Can you hear me all right? Yes? No? Yes?
A little louder. Yeah, a little louder. Eat the microphone.
Eat it? Eat it? Am I eating the microphone there? Okay, so this is my security blanket. I have not rehearsed this at all. It's a trip from 7 years ago, and so a lot happened, and I had a tough time kind of putting it all together. So I'm just going to talk about how this trip came about, how I prepared the trip itself, and then just think of afterthoughts. Susan already did a nice job of kind of my background, long distance touring, a lot of Chicago riding and stuff. But what I am not, I did not grow up around motorcycles, no racetrack experience, no off-road. My mechanic experience is my friend Frank, over my shoulder telling me what to do, and then redoing everything I just did. So I'm not mechanically inclined. Which makes you a little nervous on some of these long trips when you're by yourself or with someone else who does not know what they're doing either. Some of the roads I've done, Route 66, Deals Gap, which is Tail of the Dragon, Pacific Coast Highway, the East Coast, MotoGP, Indianapolis a couple times, Austin, all that kind of fun stuff. So how this trip came about, the credit goes to my friend Jim, who, it was his idea. Basically, I met at an industry event. He was on the panel, and with these panels, they try to make people comfortable, and they're like, "Oh, tell me something personal." And he's like, "I like long-distance motorcycle touring." So, I did not hear anything he said after that. I did not hear anything the panel said after that. When they were done, I went and found Jim. We became friends. We had all these people in common. That being said, over a year, maybe we only hung out twice, a couple rides. That was about it. And out of the blue, I got a text that just says, "Do you want to go to Alaska?" So I text back, I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to Alaska." And so we decide basically, we're each going to take a shot at making a plan, and then we'll regroup to see how our notes line up. So it turns out I have a first cousin who moved to Alaska. He works in construction, he's doing all this cool stuff. Hadn't seen him in years. And then he lives right near Kenai Peninsula. And there's just all this cool stuff going on there, like fishing and everything else that happens in Alaska. And so already for me, it's all falling together. But I take my time sending my plan to him, and before he sees mine, I get his. And, fair enough, he's in California. He has a place in California and Chicago. He wants to take his Triumph motorcycle, meet me in Calgary, and then I'm looking at the route, and it's it makes sense. There's only one way to go west, and then you hit the Alaskan Highway, which starts in Canada, and then instead of going towards the Kenai Peninsula, it starts to veer up, and it hits Fairbanks, and I'm like, okay, Fairbanks, that's okay. And then it just shoots straight up north to the Arctic Ocean, the full length of Alaska, and this is what's called the Dalton Highway. And so, I'm looking to get basically a state of Alaska refrigerator magnet that I can justifiably put on my refrigerator. And he's got me thinking about like all these failed expeditions where like souls were lost, people died. And so but then like, we've got 2 weeks. Like he's going to come to his senses. I'm not going to push. When you push, people dig in. So we keep talking about this, and I'm waiting. And he's super confident. And, like matter of fact, we're going to do this, and I'm just waiting. And finally, the light bulb goes off, but it's in my head, not his head. And like his confidence, and he's just like, we can do this. I'm like, all right, you know what, we can do this. So now we're committed. We're going to go to Fairbanks. We're going to go up the Dalton Highway. We're going to go to a place called Prudhoe Bay, which is also known as Dead Horse. It's kind of a place that sounds like a dead horse. So I start researching, and of course, you go straight to the internet, which is like the worst place, and like it's just the worst. And I keep seeing ice road truckers, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Maybe like the Dalton Highway connects to the ice road trucker road. It is the ice road trucker road. It's season 3, and so like, I'm researching this, and I go back to YouTube, and I find the trailer, and this is just the other day. So I'm going to read this to you. I'm not going to try to do like a low over voice narrator kind of thing. I'm not going to. You can read it. But this is what it says, and as he's narrating, they keep interspersing like actual quotes from these truckers. So it says, in the dark heart of Alaska, there's a road where hell is frozen over. The ice road truckers are now in Alaska on the most dangerous road ever, confronting their toughest challenge, and out there, not everyone survives. So then here's these quotes that these truckers are saying. There are all sorts of horror stories. A man is killed every 6 months. You'll probably freeze to death and die. We're gonna die. My favorite is, a couple of years ago, I broke my face. And then it ends with Aerosmith singing Living on the Edge. So I'm like, okay, that's the History Channel's version of the Dalton Highway. So I turned to ADV Reiner, and I think that this is going to be better, and it is. And here's kind of like, it's a list, like a legendary list, like if you've ever seen Princess Bride, and they have like the fire swamp, and they tell like all these are the things. So first of all, this road only exists because of the oil pipeline, and like the trucks are king. You have to respect the trucks, and maybe they'll respect you. And so that's it. It's the pipeline. You have a few stops, but otherwise it's like pristine nature, and then just the pipeline. The weather is completely unpredictable. It could be like in the middle of the summer, start snowing, ice over. We were going in July, which seems a little safer than going any other time, but still. And then periodically the road just like floods, washes out, or there's ice heaves, and they just have to rebuild the road. They just do it like in whatever way works. It keeps changing year to year. You don't know what's going to be paved. You don't know what's going to be gravel. You don't know anything from like month to month. So if you could read all you want about look out for this, look out for that, it doesn't matter. It changes. The other thing is this thing called calcium chloride, which I've never heard of before. Basically, there's dust on this road. It kicks up, so they put calcium chloride to like keep the dust from coming. But when it rains, it turns to sludge, and when it's sludge, it gets on your engine, and then it bakes like ceramics to your engine. And then the last one, and this really does go back to like the Princess Bride thing with the what they call them, the like rodents of unusual size. They have mosquitoes of unusual size in Alaska. Yeah, seriously, that's like the scariest part for me. So I, as Susan mentioned, my bike is an R1100R. It's the most basic of basic bikes that BMW made at the time. They had all these R bikes. RS was the R Sport, the GS is the off-road. Mine is like the Roadster. It's like the starter bike. I loved it. Love it. It's parked out front. But, I'm thinking like maybe I should get a KLR. I kind of always had like this, vibe for KLRs. So part of this ADV like research is like, all right, what should I do in terms of bike? Everyone is like, get a dual sport. That's like for sure. But I find that there are some people who have done it on street bikes. I love my bike. And the last thing is they say no matter what bike you take, your bike's never going to be the same. So here I am kind of like researching, and like at some point I realized I'm just ruminating, like, right? Like you, basically what you're trying to find out is like, can I get there and get back and not die? Can I not crash my bike? That's what you want to know. But you're not going to find that on the internet, right? Like I know some people have made it, some people have come back. They've had people like medevac helicopters come, take people away, people have died. But there have been people who have made it. And I realize I have that information, and now what I'm really trying to decide is, can I make it? And the only way to do that is to go. So Jim is he's riding a Triumph Trophy, which is also a street bike. A little bit more justification. And like for the last little bit of rationalization, not being an off-road guy, I've got friends, dear friends, Julie and Fritz. They live in Athens, Georgia. For a long time, they lived on 2 acres of land kind of in the middle of nowhere. And they had a block that was just this treacherous driveway, no pavement. There was a pond that would flood it, and it would just get all gnarly and stuff. And I visited them so many times, did not crash once. So I'm like, all right, I just have to string that driveway together like, a million times. It'll be fine. So I'm deciding I'm taking my street bike. I had like waxed it for many years, and like we're growing old together. It's time to kind of just move forward with this relationship. So we don't have much time. We have 2 weeks to do this. It's 4,000 miles one way. And so I decided to pack my bike and just go straight into work and leave straight from work. So this is like kind of getting into the longest commute anyone's ever taken in their lives. And so I end up working late. This is really a false start. So I'm used to doing like 500, 700 mile days. And I work late, and then I'm like, okay, so it's dark. I don't like riding when I'm dark, but I'm just going to do highway. I can manage this as long as there's no rain, there's no construction, I'll be fine. There's rain, and then I hit construction. 100 miles in, I get a hotel. I feel so stupid. It's like, like the shotgun goes out for the race and you just kind of like go fall on your face. So that's what I do. Next day, so it's 1,600 miles left. And, I can do this. So I start going, I have 2 more days to get to Calgary. And part of the way, and so like, I don't know, sometimes like, so my gas tank is only 200 mile range. And sometimes you see a gas stop, and like, on the highway, they're like right there. You just roll right in. But every once in a while, like you need gas. And you see these janky, like, stenciled signs that just say gas. So this is what I have to do, and I start riding and riding and riding off the highway farther and farther and farther, and I finally get there. There's nobody at the gas station, but it's one of these gas stations where you just swipe the card and go. It's like out in the country, this is a thing, in Canada, this is a thing. So I'm by myself, get the gas, no problem. Just go to start the engine, it's just this little click. No, nothing. And my bike has been reliable to this point, no problems, no nothing. And so I keep trying, like I'm just willing it to start. For like an hour, I finally give up, and I'm just like thinking to myself, like, okay, I've had these situations where it did not work out, went home, started again. Difference is usually I'm by myself, and I know that my friend is waiting for me, or will be waiting for me in Calgary. So my plan is to just keep trying. And that's what happened. Finally the engine starts, like no explanation, no nothing. There's no one to help me. I have been thinking about just camping at this gas station. And so now it's started. But like this is a very real thing. I'm not like in the lower 48. Like I'm gonna go to like wilderness. And it's like too late. I'm on the trip, I'm like, fuck it. Like I'm going, and like if I break down, it's gonna be in the middle of nowhere, they're gonna have to find me, all this kind of stuff. It's like and so I go, and so between this delay and everything, I get 600 miles in, and that's it. Which means 1,000-mile day the next day. Yeah, right? Not a morning person either. But I got up in the morning when I go riding, and I hit the first of what are to be like constant storms, like in Canada. And it's the kind of thing that reminds you, like you're an ant. The world is spinning, spiraling through space at like thousands and thousands of miles. Like we feel secure right now. We are not secure. Like these storms remind us of that fact. And then I hit rainbows. Double rainbows. The storm's gone. I feel good. Still like 300 miles left. I'm exhausted. I come rolling up 997 miles. 3 miles short of the 1,000-mile day, too tired to just even go 3 more miles just to like round that out. Gym is, of course, like it's broad daylight. It's like 10 or 11 at night, broad daylight, because you know the whole sun thing. That's And so you know, Jim's like on his balcony, smoking a cigar, relaxing. So we get there, really cool. We have dinner and all this kind of stuff. And Calgary's not far from Banff. So the next day, like the trip is on. Like we get there, tourists. You start seeing beautiful things. You start seeing animals. Like you feel like something big is going on. We are in this trip. Something kind of funny to note. So like, you know, you start obsessing about the Dalton Highway and all these legends, and you forget like any of those Canadian roads, like the Alaska. That's like not a joke. Like here in Chicago, when they're doing construction, like maybe on 4 lanes they tear 2 up, and then it's like, oh my god, like side by side. In Canada, they're just like, screw it. They tear everything out. So it's dirt, it's gravel, it's whatever, and sometimes it's just 1 lane and it's a pilot car. So you're like behind the pilot car thinking like you don't want to crash anyways, but you also don't want to crash and like tie up semis and all these other people behind you. So like right off the bat, like, you know, nature and all that stuff, great, it's beautiful, great, but like we are in it. So I have to come back to also there's gas management. So like 200-mile range, I think he's got like 300 or 350 or something like that. So we stop, and you know, he's looking at the map. He's like, all right, next gas is in 100. After that, it's 200. Like, this is where we should stop at the 100. I'm like, great. So we're going, and it's like 70 miles in, and he starts waving at me, and there's a gas station. I'm like, thinking, this is stupid. Like, we stop here, great. Another 30 miles. Like, I can't make it that 200. So we keep waving at each other, no intercoms, and I keep waving them off. We finally shrugs his shoulders. We keep going. So eventually, by the side of the road, out of gas, we're having a discussion about the metric system. And there's no cars. We've not seen any cars, like very few cars. And here we are. And so, you know, again, going through all these ideas, none of them are workable. And we just see this little dot off in the distance. And like, we've been there for like 3 minutes. And this dot becomes a car, and gets closer and closer, wave it down like you wave down a taxi cab. They pull over, ask for gas, has a gas tank, fills it up. I try to give money, he won't take it. I force the money on it, we're on our way. It's literally like faster than you can get an Uber in Chicago. Like one of my friends got on gas on the way down to Georgia one time. It took us 2 hours to get roadside assistance. It's like an absolute miracle. I'm starting to fall in love with Canada. So we continue, and it's a lot of good stuff. A lot of like just beautiful, we're seeing animals, all that stuff. And we're pulling into a gas station, and now kind of like the second of the kind of the ghosts of this trip shows up. I hear this metal clanging as I'm pulling the gas station. You know, you hear just like, it's all engine vibration and wind. When you get to the gas station, now you can hear what's going on. And it's, I don't have anything to like compare. It's like the worst kind of metal clanging that like you don't want to hear from an engine. Like, yeah, like clutch plates, like what the hell is happening? And I look down, and it's just like the buckle from one of my straps, like banging. So I'm like, oh God, this is no big deal. And then I'm like, oh my God, my top. What happened to like the seat back, you know? It's there, no problem. But for some reason, something's a little off. I can see more ground than normal. My whole hard case is gone. Yeah. And I start to like go through the inventory of like what is in this thing. And before I can like fully panic, a guy, another Canadian, walks up with this hard bag in his hand, just hands it to me. And like, so like, you know, we had gone straight from the other gas station. We'd been like 170 miles in between. There's no hope of finding this thing. So I hit a pothole. The thing popped off, tumbled into a ditch. He pulled over, went down in the ditch, retrieved it, got in his van, and chased me down and gave me back his hard bag. Yes, right? But the tab had broken off completely, and so like now I have to put this thing back on. I'm trying to work it out with cargo straps. And like kind of a side note, after this trip I read Jupiter's Travels. I don't know If anyone knows, like, yeah, Ted Simon is like the godfather of global touring. I probably should have read it before I did this trip. But so much in that book resonated with me, even though what he did was so much bigger. But he also lost luggage and had a truck driver track him down and hand it back to him. But he also said that, like, these things that go wrong, if you notice, a lot of what I'm talking about are the things that went wrong, not the things that went right. These are the things that make the trip. And it's for this reason that we meet this guy named John. So I'm working on trying to get this thing, like, hooked on. And from behind me, I just hear this guy say, like, planned obsolescence, right? Like, so I know I'm dealing with, like, an educated human being, like, right off the bat. And I turn around, and he's standing there. There's another motorcyclist, and he's riding R1150R BMW, a 2010. So it's like my bike 10 years later, immediately trustworthy guy, like, you know, judge them, you know. And so, like, you know, we have this conversation. I finally get the bike kind of rigged up, and now John is part of our travel team here. Yeah, he's a super cool guy. He was 27. He was an engineer. Decided he, like, not like dropped out, but like got a job that's not easy to do. I don't know if we have any engineers, but not easy. And then he decided it was boring. He dropped out, sold everything, bought this bike, and was just traveling cross country. We kind of got the vibe he was a little bit like lonely, so it was good he was hanging out with us. So let's see. Sorry to refer to my notes here. Okay, so one of the good things about John, he was camping the whole way, and Jim and I had brought camping gear, but all we did is stay at hotels. So he was kind of like the catalyst for us to start staying at campgrounds. And so, you know, there's this like mountain rising out of the ground. There's nothing there. It looks like Lord of the Rings. There's like a lake at the bottom of the camp. It's great. But then the next day it starts raining, and so we're back to like the lodges. And that's fine, except for the next day. I wake up, I go to start my bike. We are in like the middle of nowhere, Canada, and again, just that like soft click. Nothing. No like whir, no like turnover, no nothing. And I try again. So Jim and John are like out front, packed up, ready to go, and I gotta go tell them, like, this is not happening. I go and I tell them, completely in denial. They're like, this is, you know, so we go back to the bike, starts right up. Same logic. I'm like, all right, if I got this far, same thing, like, I'm not gonna stop here, we're gonna keep going. Interesting, so finally we get to the Alaskan-Canada border. We do all like the poses and the photo op kind of stuff that you see in like Aerostitch and Roadrunner magazine and all that. And there's this like cute, around 27-year-old hitchhiking, like hippie-ish backpack girl. And we tell her, like, you should go talk to her. And she's like going back into like Canada. But like, you know, like you're on an adventure, go. We're kind of kidding, but he goes and he does it. Next thing I know, like, she's loading this, like, hiking backpack. He's already got his bike completely loaded down. And they're gone. They just go. And that was it. Like, you know, bye, John. Jim and I are back on our own. And, yeah, good for John. So we make the Fairbanks. And this is kind of like the base. You know, we get, like, this is where you go, hotel, really nice restaurants. Buy a gas can. While I'm buying it, I ask the clerk like how the weather is supposed to be tomorrow. He just laughs. He's like, we don't watch the weather. He's like, no matter what they say, it can change. You know, all this kind of stuff. We're starting to get, you know, an idea of what's to come. The next day we get up, we're, you know, right out of the gate, construction, and we're waiting because it is one of these like single line. You know, you follow the car and you go. And as we're waiting, this other motorcycle pulls up. No luggage, no nothing. It's kind of like this dual sport bike. So we start talking to the guy. And it turns out he's like a remote disaster recovery medic stationed at this like Arctic research center. Super cool. He's been at like oil rigs, like really cool guy. And we find out we're going like further north than where this guy is stationed. So like it's kind of like really sinking in like what we're doing. And we just keep going. So some of the kind of like landmarks, like the Yukon River, there's like a pump station there. It's the only pump station, so a place called Coldfoot. You get to Coldfoot. Coldfoot is so first of all, it's like a mainstay in the ice road truckers. And it's kind of like, it's not quite the Star Wars cantina, but like if you picture, instead of aliens, like a lot of flannel shirts and like very tough humans. And then like other motorcyclists, like really friendly, cool people. But I remember, so there's this one couple, the other thing was everybody's on dual sports. Like we are the only people on street bikes. And so there's this couple, and they just had a miserable time. Like they were going to do the Dalton, but they didn't. They ended up there, I don't know how. And they had done some other road, and they got caught, and just all these horrible things had happened, which, like, I get. Like, that's why you're doing this trip. But they would not shut up. And they were like, we wish we never did it. You shouldn't do it. Go home. All this stuff. Yeah. And so, like, Jim doesn't care. Jim's much more well-adjusted human being than I am. And it triggers me. And it's like you're about to eat like a donut, and someone starts telling you how much sugar is in it and how bad it is. Like, you're just gonna eat the donut. Let's go. So I get over that. We go, and we go through Elkin Pass, which is like, it's just this amazing scenery. It's like, I can't describe it. It's just so picturesque. It's just beautiful. It starts to rain a little bit, but we do pretty well overall. At one point, when I realized that even with the gas tank, like we're at a point of no return, I stopped and I just checked in with Jim. I'm like, if we go any further, like a mile further, like we can't turn back. He looks at me like crazy because I'm the one that got all bent out of shape with these other people. But I just wanted to make sure he knew with the gas stuff that happened previously. So we go, we make it. It's kind of desolate when you get to like Prudhoe Bay. So it's this like oil town, and there's nothing there. When you get a hotel, it's like all the food you can eat. Alcohol is not legal. It makes perfect sense. Like, it's dark at certain times of the year. You just feel like it's too depressing for alcohol even. And we were going to stay there, like this is part of the experience, but like it was early enough, the weather hadn't been that bad, and we decided like, all right, we're just going to go back. I mean, like, not in a negative way at all, but just like we have the time, we were on a tight schedule, let's go back. So I'm going to read a quick quote. So it was kind of funny, just like a month ago, Jim sent me a text that was like an excerpt from his journals. I'm doing this all, like I did not keep journals, I had to like piece all of this together. But the text like starts out, well, it doesn't start out, it just includes, Tom dumped his bike, heavy gravel going about 15 to 20. So 15 to 20 doesn't sound bad, I'm sure even from Jim's perspective, he was behind me, it doesn't sound that bad. But here's the thing, like, I wasn't feeling it, I knew I wasn't feeling it. I think you guys have all been there with something, you're like, maybe not motorcycling, but like, you're trying to make something and you break it and just like rage quit. Like, this is the kind of headset that I had. And I knew I just needed a break, and I just kept going. And so what happens is you have this really soft gravel, it's like these like very small size gravel, and the trucks are going. And it's one thing, like everybody knows you just stay in the trench, like you just kind of ride it out. But these trenches were crisscrossing. And so I came to a crisscross, and I could feel the front wheel sliding, which you know is like the worst. Like you got two wheels, that's not the one you want sliding. And I think I'm about to catch it, and I do catch it, but I catch it too hard. Back wheel, like I'm like, this is great, and then I feel like that like mini high slide. Like I don't like go flipping over, it just slams you into the gravel. And that's the thing, like the 15 to 20 miles don't care. It's that whole like physics of just getting body slammed. And I'm sure it looked fine, but it like cracked both turn signals on that side, shattered my whole fairing, snapped the, like clean off my tank bag, secure, all that kind of stuff. So I get back up and Jim's just like, he's like, all right, let's go. And I'm like, like, hang on, wait a minute. So I collect myself. He's really confused by this, which I've got so much adrenaline pumping through me. So we get on our way, and everything's fine again, and we get to the like Alkin Pass again. And now that little storm had turned into like the blackest, like even like when you look at pollution, not as black as these clouds. And like literally there was a helicopter like flying over, and you hear the chopper blades, and it just disappears. Like when you're like watching like 2012 or like Armageddon or something, like I'm like, we are gonna die. And so the trip up took us 6 hours, and the trip back took us 8.5 hours to get back. And that sludge is a very real thing. It's the slickest thing I've ever been on, including like snow, sleet, doesn't matter, like that sludge is just awful. But we made it back to Coldfoot, and then we made it back to Fairbanks. And coincidentally, I kind of did the math. It was the equivalent of 8,000 of Julie and Fritz's driveway. And just one little crash. So in Fairbanks, we pitched back up with John. He texted. We're very happy to hear. Yeah, right. Very exciting news. What happened? Sadly, no summer of love. So they get to the other side of the border and realize that this was an insane idea. Like he was like completely packed down. She just like was not working. Almost drop her off immediately. And also the border, like both getting over and then back, did not think it was nearly as entertaining as we all thought this thing was. So he kind of got hassled. But so he decided to leave his bike there. He had a friend in Fairbanks. So they took a truck up to Prudhoe Bay and back. And really, at that point, like all the hard stuff was out of the way. Like we still were dealing on these roads, and they were like, we'd be coming up over a ridge. We were kind of pointing out potholes to each other and stuff, but there were times you're coming over a ridge, and like it's too late. Like you see this giant, literally, like I know people say in Chicago, car swallowing. These things are big enough, like they will wreck your car, and you just kind of get around it. We'd be apologizing to each other for not pointing out these potholes. Ran into a herd of buffalo, like all this stuff. The truth is that at this point, the weight of all of this is just kind of coming off. Like you feel, there's still work to do, but like the hard stuff is done. You start to feel like you've accomplished something. And so Jim had decided to come back to Chicago, this place here. And like after these 2 weeks, 8,000 miles, it's like funny how like your home becomes this surreal thing. Like you just kind of, in such a short time, adapt to this different lifestyle. And it's just weird to be coming home. So I like not really sure if there's really a point to all this trip, and it reminded me of just something when I was researching all of this. One of the comments, and I tried to find, I have all these bookmark message points, I could not find the person who said this and exactly what they said, but to paraphrase, they said the Dalton Highway is stupid, and anybody who wants to ride the Dalton Highway is also stupid. And at the time, I just was like, well, that's not really helpful. But now, like, I'm like, what? Actually, it really made me think, like, coming back, like, why did I do this? I don't have a reason. And it's not really the reason, like, it's like, things just resonate with us. Like, we try to justify it, like, Alaska's beautiful. But, so at the Arctic Circle, there's it's like a welcome center. It does not belong there. It looks like something you would see at any like state park. And we're there, we're all muddy, covered and everything, and this like tour bus pulls up, and they're all wearing like pleated pants and polos. And they get out, and like, so if it's just Alaska's beautiful, I might as well have just got my pleated pants and my polos and taken a tour bus. Like it's not about that. And like in terms of like your friends asking you, like, yeah, that's maybe part of the reason, but like half the time I cannot commit to going to dinner. I can't, like that's not the reason either. I don't know why I went, except for I think in the end, like when you get back from something like that, is when you start to realize like why you did it. Like you can't like watch like a movie or something and see like what it's like to see these animals, all this kind of stuff. I think we all kind of know that, but really like the people, like two Canadians, like above and beyond. Like I live in Chicago, I'm used to like the whole like I need gas scam, and like everyone is so jaded, and it's like, and then meeting John, it was just like this really cool guy, and like it's just like somebody you can relate to that you like meet for like 2 seconds, and really like that's kind of the reason you go. You don't really know, at least I don't know until you get back. What you think you know, you don't. One side note. So the motorcycle, so like, I can't recommend taking this trip on a street. But I'm super glad that I did. When I brought the bike back, I had so many things, all those things replaced, like the regular service. I was at 2,000 miles of the regular service, new tires. And the mechanic is like, your starter engine is dead. Like, you're lucky you brought it to us when you did. So like every start that I had, that whole trip, it never failed, but it was on borrowed time. So that's pretty much it. But I do have one last kind of indulgence, if you guys could. So this trip, I debated like how much to include of this in this trip, but my sister had passed away just months right before this trip, and I was just gonna kind of leave it out, except for today's her birthday. So she wasn't a motorcyclist, but she loved travel, she loved adventure. I think she really would have enjoyed this night. I'm sure she would have enjoyed listening to other people too. If you could all just like quickly just raise a glass.
What's her name?
Jean.
Jean.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What travel ends where everything was completely planned and perfect, and that's exactly how it should happen. No travel happens that way, and never should, by the way. You should pick your destination and then make the trip there as your journey, as Tom has just excellently demonstrated. What an incredible journey. So glad you're back. Enjoy the next one.